What's up YouTube, the Unmatched Gamer here. Gonna bring you my Nintendo GameCube review, or more like an overview of the console. So I'm just gonna do a basic overview of the Nintendo GameCube. And yeah, so let's get started with it. Starting off, we're gonna take a look at the console. So looking at the front of the console, we got four controller ports and 2 memory card slots. Just like the N64, except the N64 just had 4 controller ports. So they kept 4 controller ports, which is really cool, which is really handy for a lot of co-op games. In the front of the console, you got that. You got a nice little gray panel, and then we got graphics by ATI, and 2 rubber feet. On the top of the console, we got the power button, clicky, your eject button, and our reset button, and the Nintendo GameCube jewel with the Nintendo branding on the top. Going on to the right, we have a single exhaust cooling fan. And then going on to, oh, sorry, that was the left. This is the right. Whoops. And going on to the right, we have the vent for the cooling fan. Flipping the console over, look at the bottom, we have just your standard ports. So you got a high-speed port that was used for a Game Boy player, actually, you can get for this. So you can use a Game Boy player, so I hope to get that, but for the Game Boy player. And then you got serial port 2, which was used for the broadband adapter. And we got this unused port right here that was never used for anything, and actually it got stripped out of later GameCubes. As you can see, my GameCube did not have that. And last but not least, let's move into the back of the system. So on the back, we have our AV port and our power port, and our handle, which is a I might add is a very sturdy handle. So I'm just going to demonstrate it. Just pick it up. You can really shake that thing around, and it's not going to fall off. It's pretty sturdy on there. So anyway, going on. You may be asking yourself, if you have a GameCube and you have an early GameCube, you're like, well, I have 2 ports on the back of mine. Where's 2 ports? Where's your 2 ports? Unfortunately, as many people know, but Nintendo stripped the digital AV out that is supposed to be here. The analog is supposed to be there, and the digital AV out is supposed to be there. They stripped it out of GameCubes past 2003. So unfortunately, if you have a GameCube that does not have that digital AV out, you cannot use those very expensive component cables. Let's go a little bit of backstory behind that. The reason why Nintendo stripped that out is the only way you could utilize those ports, that port was through component cables, which was only available through Nintendo's online store back in the day. Well, long story short, well, not long story, but whatever. The only way to get those was Nintendo.com. And not all the people back in 2000, 2001 had TVs that could support component. So not a lot of people were buying those cables. So Nintendo just discontinued the cables and discontinued the port. You may be asking yourself, well, big deal, I'll just get a GameCube with the port. You could do that, but the component cables are ridiculously expensive. They're like almost $300 on eBay for a cable. And the reason why they're so expensive is because they have a special chip that converts the digital signal to analog. Now, if you have a original Xbox or PS2, you'd be like, well, I can get component cables for cheap. Yes, that's because those consoles both convert it on the internal, have a chip on the inside of the console. This doesn't. It required a chip in the cable to do that. And unfortunately, no third-party companies have came to replicate that, so the only way to get component out of this machine is through the official component cables, which are $300, which is ridiculously expensive. But there's one caveat there. If you want to stick with official GameCube hardware to play your games, you actually can get an S-video cable for this. So you can get an S-video cable to connect to that, and you can kind of get better video out of it. It's better than nothing, but yeah. So if you want to use authentic GameCube hardware and you don't want to get component, S-video is the best you can get, my friend. Sorry about that, but blame yell at Nintendo. They're the one that kind of botched this up. So let's go into a little bit of backstory about this console now. This console was released in 2001, the same weekend as the original Xbox. It was Nintendo's, what was it? Fourth home video game console. It was Nintendo's first disc-based console. Obviously, it uses mini discs. Now let's go into that. Now we use discs, which would be like, alright, sweet, 2000, 2001, the console uses discs. Discs, awesome. Well, there's an unfortunate problem with that. The discs Nintendo used were proprietary mini DVDs. Of course, an obvious copyright measure, but it hindered the console because those discs can only hold up to 1.5 gigabytes of data, where a PS2 or original Xbox game disc can hold up to 8 gigabytes if it's dual layered. So that really hurt the system. It couldn't a lot of games that were on the original Xbox or PS2 couldn't be ported over to the GameCube, or if they were ported over to the GameCube, they had to do multiple discs, and the games were watered down, which kind of sucks. Another thing about that disc format is, since they're miniature, it didn't have a full-size disc drive, which means no DVD movies. Now, in the early 2000s, for DVD movies to be on your home video game console was a big deal, because DVD players were expensive. So, unlike the original Xbox and PS2, this system couldn't have that. It couldn't have that same market. This wasn't a DVD player. It didn't play DVD movies or CDs. So that also really hurt the system, because not a lot of people bought it because they couldn't play DVD movies. So that's the problem with the discs. They're proprietary mini DVDs. Now let's go into some myths about this console. A lot of people also didn't buy this console because of how it launched. The system launched with two colors, the black version you're seeing here and the purple version. Now a lot of people saw the purple version of the system and kind of got freaked out about it. They're like, oh, that's a kiddie console, don't buy that. So not a lot of people bought it because they thought it was a kiddie console. So not a lot of people had these GameCubes, and that's a shame because the GameCube is a genuinely good console. It's one of my favorite consoles, really. It's an amazing console. It's an amazing 6th generation console. So that's that. Another myth is people say this thing's not comparable to what the PlayStation 2 and Xbox is doing. That's another myth. That's a complete lie. In terms of power, this thing sits between the original Xbox and the PS2. So yes, this thing's more powerful than the PS2. And trust me, also a lot of people blame it because the games weren't good. The graphics on a lot of GameCube games are some of the most impressive graphics of the 6th generation. And of course the original Xbox beating it out, but still, a lot of people blame it because it's weak and it doesn't have much power. This system has a lot of power, you know. I sound like a broken record, which I kind of am, but whatever. But for example, games like Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker really pushed the GameCube hard and didn't push it to its full potential. And that game was amazing. The color, another game, Super Mario Sunshine. The color palette, it made the colors popped in that game. Everything's amazing about that. The GameCube is a good console in terms of power. So that's kind of a little bit of backstory behind it. So let's go ahead and show it compared to its other 6th generation competitors. Here's a Nintendo GameCube compared to the PS2 and Microsoft Xbox. Very small. The GameCube compared to the original Xbox, which, yep, that's a pretty big difference there. There's a GameCube compared to the Sony PlayStation 2. Going to my games I have for the consoles. Here's my current collection for the Nintendo GameCube. Starting off, you got Chicken Little, which is an okay game. Don't really recommend that, but whatever. Next up, we got Wave Race Blue Storm. A really good game, actually. I do recommend this one. Evolution Snowboarding. I picked this up out of a local video store for about $90. No, whoa, never mind. 90 cents. Picked this up for 90 cents, and I don't recommend this game. If you see it out in the wild, in the wilder retro gaming store for really cheap, I'd say go for it, but I don't generally recommend this game. This game should be worth like 25 cents. An amazing game. I got this the same year I got my GameCube, and this game literally entertained me for a whole entire summer. What more can I say about this game? Great graphics, great gameplay, great story, great soundtrack. Everything's great about this game. I really love this game. A classic and a must-own for the Nintendo GameCube, Super Mario Sunshine. One of my favorite Mario games, actually. I really like it. I've beaten this multiple times. It's a really good game. I highly recommend this one. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. I recommend this one as well. This is a really good game. It's actually a really cheap game, about $12 for the GameCube, which is cheap for the GameCube, ironically. But if you see this out, and it's really cheap, pick it up. It's a really good game. And my first GameCube game I ever owned was Lego Star Wars, the video game. Again, another amazing game. Very cheap as well. You should pick it up if you ever see it. Next up is the controller. A lot of people judge the GameCube controller as being kind of a bad controller. And this game is one of the most comfortable controllers I've ever held. Sorry about that, guys. It just feels so good in the hand. You know, your fingers lay naturally where they're supposed to. The analog sticks, both of them feel very well. Both of them are very responsive. Very responsive. Same thing with this one. I don't really like the C-stick a lot because for first-person shooter games, it kind of gets awkward when you do dual camera action with these. It's kind of weird. The D-pad, a lot of people criticize the D-pad, and it kind of deserves it, to be honest with you. It's a very small D-pad, and the buttons are really kind of really firm and uncomfortable to use. It's not really a comfortable D-pad to use. Luckily, a lot of GameCube games only use it every once in a while, so using it every once in a while is not bad. But for games like, for example, if you have the Game Boy player and you're playing Game Boy games, it's not comfortable to use. It's kind of small and mediocre. It's not the best. They got the buttons A, B, X, Y. It's pretty good button. Well, they're buttons. There's nothing more to say about that. Let's get it over with. They're buttons. We got our triggers, which these are actually a mix between analog and digital, which means that the lighter you push, so for example, Super Mario Sunshine is the best example of this. If you push the button, if you push it really lightly, not a lot of water is going to come out of the flood. But if you mash it down, a lot of water is going to come out. So a lot of games are like that, and it also has a second click in it. So you hear about that? There's a second click in there. But overall, these are actually really good buttons. They're kind of weird, but once you get used to, they're kind of weird if you're used to the PS2 and original Xbox triggers, but you get used to them really quickly. Same thing on the other side. Now we got the Z button. Now this is unlike the PS2, it only has one shoulder button. So there's it, Z. Pretty, it's a good button. It's all right. Nothing fancy about it. It's a button. It works really well. And in the back, we got Nintendo. Oops, sorry, the cord's in the way. Nintendo GameCube and Nintendo. And the controller and the length on the cord is actually pretty decent. I mean, it's kind of unraveled, but it's okay. I mean, like I said, it's pretty decent. You know, where I game from, it just about reaches there. But if you have your stuff very far away, you should consider probably either getting a Wavebird. Get a Wavebird or getting a controller extension. But yeah, there's a controller. I like it. Last accessory I'm going to talk about is the memory card. So obviously you're going to need this for if you have any game. You're obviously going to need this because it's a disk-based system, so it doesn't have any built-in memory. So here's your memory card. It's an official one. This is, I think, the memory card 251. There was an Animal Crossing memory card that was 59 blocks, and there's this one that's a stock one that was about 250, and there's a white one that was called the memory card 1019. But this is your kind of standard average 250 block memory card. It's the one you're going to commonly find for cheap. These go for about $1, $2, so they're not that expensive, but yeah. That's the memory card. So that has been my review of the Nintendo GameCube, or more like overview of the console. I hope you guys enjoyed it, but yeah, there it is, Nintendo GameCube. I'm gonna leave my final thoughts, like the pros and cons list, in the description box below. So if you want to look at that, go ahead and read that. But in general, what do I think about this console? I think this is an excellent console. I think if you don't have one of these in your collection and you're into the sixth generation of gaming, definitely pick one of these up. Definitely an easy pickup, and they're pretty cheap. You know, if you go on eBay, you can pick one up with the console and the cables for about $30. The controllers, unfortunately, are what hold their value. These are about $30, but you can get used ones. Now, if you're going for the used controllers, I recommend a Circa controller. Circa, remember that brand, Circa, C-I-R-K-A. Circa. Those are the only decent third-party brands I've found for the GameCube controller. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the GameCube. If you don't have one and you want one, pick it up. Great. So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace.